Can Taulia break his own passing records?
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Tomorrow there will be college football played. Notre Dame plays, USC plays, and week 0. So there is real football tomorrow. And in 2 weeks, or about a week from now, Maryland will take on Towson in a huge first game. It's an exciting part of the year for college football fans. But we're going to be talking about, can Taulia Tagovailoa break his own passing records this coming year? If you remember, in 2021, Taulia had the best Maryland quarterback season that anyone has really ever had. He passed for 3,860 yards and 26 passing touchdowns. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it's going to be very hard for him to beat the passing yards record that he set by himself. 3,860 yards is something else. I looked at about how much that averages out per game, and that's about 296 yards per game. And that is a ton of yards to get per game. Last year, he was around 3,000 yards, which isn't a bad thing. I'm going to talk about that. But can he break 3,860 yards and pass for 296 yards? I doubt it. And I also don't think I want him to. I was looking back at 2 years ago when he was throwing for a ton of yards, but they would throw the ball so many times. And there's 2 reasons why you throw the ball too many times. Either your run game isn't working or you're down by a lot. If we're up and have leads consistently, we don't need to throw the ball that much. There are times he was throwing the ball 38 to 40 times per game. That's just way too much for me, and I don't want to see that number rise that much. I want us to be able to run the ball. I want us to be able to run the ball better than last year, with headlined by the running back room by Roman Hemby. We have a 3-headed monster this year with Antoine Littleton, Roman Hemby, and Raymond Brown. So I don't want us to have to pass the ball that many times per game, because it shows that the run game isn't working or that we're down, especially with Josh Gaddis coming in and saying that Coach Loxley in his press conference said that Gaddis has some new run game concepts. Is probably the number one thing that he's brought in. If you remember his time at Michigan, they were a very good running team. So if he can bring in some of those concepts and help improve the run game, then I think that will help take down the pressure on Taulia, and it might hurt the overall statistics, but I do not want to see him throw the ball 40 to even 50 times a game in some of the games, which is crazy. I don't want him to have that pressure on him. I want us to keep the game close enough where we can run the ball a good amount of times, especially if you look back at like a Penn State or Ohio State type of game. If we get down early and we have to throw the ball that many times, obviously I want him to throw the ball all over the place. I want to throw a bunch of yards, but I'm hoping he doesn't break that record, and I don't think he will, because to answer the question, Trey, I don't think he'll break that record, because I think we'll be better everywhere else. I think we'll be better on defense, which we were better last year, if you remember, and last year his passing yards were about at 3,000. So with a better defense, better run game, I don't think we'll have to throw the ball that many times. So overall, I think it's better that if he doesn't break his own record, and even if for some reason the running game is struggling and we're getting down a lot early, averaging over 296 yards per game, almost averaging 300 yards per game in the Big Ten, in college football against some of those defenses that we're going against is not going to be easy. But there is a record I think that he can beat, is his 26 passing touchdown record. So he's actually tied with Scott Milanovic for that record, and I do think he can break that record. It's going to be close. It's going to be hard. I think he'll be hovering right around that mark. And so I think he can rack up big numbers in some of the lesser opponents in terms of the passing touchdowns, whether it's a Towson or a Charlotte. He might pass for like 4 or 5 touchdowns against those two teams, and it's like, oh, he already has 8 or 9 touchdowns on the season. Maybe not. Maybe we decide to play Billy Edwards some in those games, and he doesn't really have a chance to do that. But maybe he can pass consistently for 3 touchdowns per game against teams like in Indiana, or maybe he goes on the road to Michigan State and has 3 passing touchdowns. But he's going to have some 3-touchdown games to get to 26 passing touchdowns. It's not going to be easy to get there, but I think he does have a chance to do that. So overall, this is how I'm kind of seeing the season go. I see him getting around the 26 passing touchdowns. I think he can get to 27, 28 passing touchdowns, especially with the bowl game. That's about 2.4 passing touchdowns per game. So if he has a couple really big games, like I said, a 4-touchdown game against Towson or like a 5-touchdown game against Charlotte, then those games can go a long way. And I think he can come close to beating his passing touchdown record. But we already know in terms of overall records ever, in terms of just not just per season, but just ever, how many yards and how many passing touchdowns he has had. He's already leads in all those major categories in passing yards and passing touchdown. So I would already consider him the best Maryland quarterback ever. But can he beat himself? Which I think is almost more important at this point, is beating his own record this year. But he already has all the big-time records for Maryland football, and it's going to go down in Maryland football history as one of the best. What players can be X factors that people aren't talking about enough? We'll talk about it after this message from Game Time. Have you ever wanted to go to a game at the last minute, like a Maryland Terrapins game, but finding tickets is hard at the last minute? I've been there before, and buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is that fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, theater, whatever near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. I just downloaded Game Time tickets, and there are so many deals and tickets you can get to concerts, sporting events, and whatever cool things that you want to do. So forget about planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Out of stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On College for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. What players are we not talking about enough that can absolutely change the Maryland offense? I'm going to start with 2 wide receivers, but I'm going to start with a guy that I really think has game speed type of changing ability, and Octavian Smith, the true sophomore, played a lot as a freshman last year. I've talked about him a little bit, but everybody knows you can't teach speed, and speed kills, and Octavian Smith has speed. He has game-changing type of speed, and the wide receiver room is loaded. We've talked about it with Jason Jones, Caden Prather, Octavian Smith, of course, Ty Felton, Tyrese Chambers, Shalik Knox. The wide receiver is loaded, but I'm telling you, Octavian Smith offers something that the rest of the guys don't, and that is speed and a deep threat and the ability to catch a screen and turn it into 60 yards. If you look at Jason Jones, he's more the route runner of the group. Obviously, he's has some speed on him, but he's not the type of athlete that Octavian Smith is, or Caden Prather. He's our 50-50 guy, 6'4", can go up and get it. Tyrese Chambers offers a little bit of everything, just a good veteran of the group. But I don't think any of them have that game-changing speed ability that we look at, and he could take the top off the defense in 60 yards against Michigan and keep us in the game. Octavian Smith offers something that the rest of them don't have. But I expect Coach Loxley to rotate these guys a lot, or I kind of know he will, which is, I think, it's not a bad thing to do. I have mixed feelings about how much Maryland rotates their players. I think in specific spots they do it too much, but with this loaded wide receiver group, I can understand it. You don't want people to hit the portal. You want to play as many guys as you want. But at the same time, when it comes to winning, I don't want to see as many rotations. Like at the linebacker room, I've talked about it with Jayshon Barham. I don't want to see him come out the game. I don't want to see him rotate out the game once. He's too good of a player not to be in every play of the game. But if you look at like the running back room with Roman Hemby, Antoine Littleton, and Brown, I wouldn't mind rotating those guys a good amount. Obviously, Roman Hemby, I would like to have the most carries, but I wouldn't mind rotating those guys a good amount, or even the wide receiver room, like I said. But there's certain position groups where I think we rotate too much, where it kind of hurts us, where the best players aren't always on the field. But I don't think the wide receiver group is that type of group. But I think Octavian Smith has a chance to just be too good not to get on the field, which is what he brings in his explosive ability. And then also I think he can make a couple game-changing plays in the return game. He returned some kicks last year, and he could take one back. He's that type of athlete. He has a chance to just be an all-around guy, whether it's return game, screen game. I think he can run routes pretty well, stretch the field, whatever. Just get the ball in his hands, and he can make things happen. And another wide receiver I think we just haven't talked about enough is Ty Felton. Ty Felton is the most underrated player on the Maryland team, I think, and one of the most underrated players in the Big Ten. Obviously, maybe let me rephrase that. He's going to be a breakout this year, I think, especially next year. This is his junior year. The wide receiver room is still kind of loaded. He's waited his time, but I think people are kind of like solidifying that Tyrese Chambers will be the number 3 wide receiver and get the most snaps after Jayshon Jones and Caden Prather. But I think Ty Felton is a really good player to put outside next to Caden Prather and let Jayshon Jones operate the slot. I think Tyrese Chambers will obviously play a lot, but Ty Felton is really talented, 6'2", and can run routes. But I just think he's truly underrated. Last year, he had 300 yards. That was more than guys like Dante Demas. It was almost as much as Jacob Copeland, 2 guys that were starters last year and are in NFL camps. So I think Ty Felton really is one of the most underrated players on the team. He stepped up big last year in the bowl games. And he had many yards receiving in that game, a good amount of catches, and stepped up with all those guys down. And I think he's been kind of waiting for his chance to break out. And I think this year is a chance for him to do that in the Big Ten. I think even next year he can move on to a 1 or 2 wide receiver, but I haven't given him enough credit. I've talked a lot about Octavian Smith. I've even talked about Shalik Knox, the sophomore, but Ty Felton may be the most talented player in that room. You can just see it with the way he moves at 6'2". He has everything you want in a wide receiver. And don't be surprised if we look at this guy at the end of the year and be like, wow, he's second on our team in receiving yards behind Jayshon Jones or something like that. I'm not going to guarantee that'll happen with the amount of talent we have in that room, but don't be surprised if something like that could happen. And the next player I want to move towards on offense is tight end Preston Howard. Preston showed flashes of greatness in the spring game. The way he can move at 6'6" is truly pretty remarkable. Obviously, Corey Dyches headlines that group, but with C.J. Dupree leaving for Alabama, I think Preston Howard is going to come in and be the tight end too. And he offers he offers something different than what Corey Dyches offers. He offers the 6'6" ability to go up and get the ball, which I think he can do really well. We saw it in the spring game where he made an amazing play over the linebacker. And then he also showed another play where he's running a simple drag route, and he separates and takes it up the field, and you're like, wow, that dude is moving for 6'6". So there's certain things that Preston Howard can do that I think that we lost CJ Dupree, but I think Preston Howard can replace that. It's going to depend on how much stronger he's gotten. It's going to depend on how much the staff has developed him. Because if you remember, he was a quarterback in high school, played a lot of quarterback in high school, did some other things in high school too, but was at first a quarterback recruit and then changed to an athlete. But he's 6'6" with a ton of tools, ton of upside. He can make a couple of plays, I think, on the season that can really help in certain big games. I want to see how his run blocking has come along, but I think Preston Howard has a chance to be a really good player overall and be an X-factor type of guy and be a difference maker on the offense. And I can't wait to see what he does. Who are the X-factors on the defense? We'll tell you after this. The two-part college football preview is live on Locked On Big Ten. Go check it out. It's a preview of the whole Big Ten, Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana, whoever. It gives you the preview. All the Locked On Big Ten hosts tell you what they think about their season, how many wins they think they can get. It's an amazing episode. I talk about how many wins I think the Maryland Terrapins team can get. So go check that out on Locked On Big Ten. All right. Who can be the X factors on the defense this year? Who are some guys that we aren't talking about enough? And I think these players can change the defense and could be the difference in an improved defense or taking a step back as a defense. And I want to start with Ruben Hippolyte. Had an up and down year last year with the injuries. There was a couple games he missed. A couple games maybe he didn't play as well as he wanted to. But when he's on the field and healthy, he's a really good player. And I think he can make this linebacker room one of the best in the Big Ten, depending on how he plays. That second linebacker I expect to be rotated a lot with other guys like Wheatland and just other players. There's a bunch of players in that room that can play. But I expect Ruben Hippolyte to be the starter to start. Barham gets most of the credit in that room, as he should, being a freshman last year and being super talented, one of the highest rated recruits, and just what he can do as a player. But Ruben Hippolyte, I think, can take that room to the next level. He offers some really good speed and sideline to sideline speed. He's a really good athlete when he's healthy. So if he comes in healthy this year, I think he can be a really good team, a really good player, especially against some of the better Big Ten running backs in the running games in Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, whoever. I think he can really help stopping the run. And I think Barham and Hippolyte can form one of the best duos in the Big Ten at linebacker. And if we look around, second linebacker is definitely a question. So if he can answer one of those questions, Ruben Hippolyte can really help take the defense to the next level. And I'm expecting a big year for him. I talked to his dad, and he said it's a huge year for Ruben, and he's excited for Ruben. But I'm expecting some big things from Ruben, and so is his dad. But let's move to the next player, an X factor on the secondary part of the defense. The secondary is known to be the strongest part, maybe of the whole entire team outside of quarterback. But I'm looking at Corey Coley. I feel like it's a guy that we haven't talked about a ton. I don't know if I've touched on Corey at all this year or on the podcast. But Corey Coley is interesting because if Tarheeb plays the slot this year, which we saw last year when Deonte Banks or Jacorian Bennett were out or whatever, Corey Coley would be the next one to step up and play. And so if Tarheeb's playing the slot, I expect Corey Coley to get the start on the outside. That doesn't mean he'll keep it. But if he can play well, I'm not talking about like an all Big Ten type of player. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if he can just limit the big play and play solid, just solid play at the quarterback position. He doesn't have to be an all-star back there. He just has to limit the big play, make some plays here and there, and not mess up. Then I think that can really help the secondary. I think Tarheeb still just got ranked as the fourth best cornerback in the Big Ten by one Big Ten analyst. And Jaquan Shepard was one of the most highly coveted transfers in the secondary who's going to start out on the outside. So if Corey Coley is in fact in the game, he could be one of the most important players on the defense in terms of X factor ability, because we kind of know what we're going to get from the rest of the secondary, but he had up and down. He played up and down when he was in last year. There were times when I felt like teams would target him and that he struggled in coverage at times, but there were other times I thought he played really well. So if he can just limit some of those struggles, limit the big play, then I think Corey Coley can be the third corner. But there's guys breathing down his neck, whether it's Tarheeb playing that outside spot or Lionel playing out there. There are different players that can definitely step up and take the spot. It's kind of one of the number one competitions I look at is the slot cornerback, the outside cornerback position, because the rest of the secondary is already solidified. So I think Corey Coley is one of the X factors on the Maryland Terrapin defense. But that's all we have today. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe. I apologize for a little bit of the coughing. I got a cold, but it's going away. It's gotten a little bit better over these last couple of days. But please like and subscribe. College football is almost here, and it's almost game week. When I come back on the Monday podcast, it's going to be time to talk about Towson in the first game of the year, and I can't wait. So make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you can be ready for game week. But see you next time.